But right now, let's bring on Alan Adler, who is coming in from his dojo in a nondescript building somewhere in the middle of Detroit. Actually, he might be in a hotel room or something like that. Alan, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
Yeah, Michael, what this was supposed to be, but it didn't work, was a nice view of Lucas Oil Stadium where the Indianapolis Colts play. But unfortunately, it just got too bright behind me. So Isaiah said, no, you can't do that. And so now you get the nondescript hotel room backdrop.
Right. Well, just paint us a mental picture. Paint us a mental picture of what you're...
Lucas Oil Stadium is pretty massive, for one thing. One of my favorite memories of the place is when my daughter played in the National Marching Band Finals there, and they were actually a finalist. That was pretty cool.
Wow,
but anyway,
that is cool.
We didn't come to talk about that, did we?
No, we didn't.
This is what the folks from the NTEA like to call Work Truck Week, or the Work Truck Show, as I always knew it before. But basically, we are looking at really big, heavy equipment all around the convention center, from really large dump trucks to snowplows to everything, utility trucks, the whole bit. But it is an important meeting for a bunch of reasons, I think. One is that for the first time in a long time, you've got people walking around without masks, talking to each other. These are people that honestly keep a lot of society moving, with the trucks that are displayed here and that sort of thing. The last time I was here when it was live was 2019. They did do one in 2020, but it was just at the beginning of the pandemic. And so there was a lot of weirdness going on. I wasn't here for that. But in 2019, it felt like everything was all about electrification. And it's funny because this year, it's very much about that, and yet it's not being touted as much simply because it's become such a big part of the landscape. And, there are people obviously showing electric vehicles, and the kickoff speaker at the Green Truck Summit on the first day was the head of CARB, Leanne Randolph from the California Air Resources Board, who, quite honestly, in a very nice way, laid down the gauntlet that said, if you want to operate in California in the next few years, you're going to need to come with electric vehicles. So, one more sort of warning that diesel is not welcome there and won't be welcome there in the 2030s. And so I think everybody's, kind of aware of that. And so they're all moving in the direction of, how do we electrify the chassis? How do we get, electric delivery vehicles, things like that. And so you've had a number of announcements in that space. One that was interesting to me yesterday really was not electric, and that was an update, a really good update, really, on the Mack medium duty. Now, the only reason we talk about this is because Mack was out of this business for 20 years. They left it and only sold, the off-highway and on-highway Class 8 trucks. But then they, about a year and a half ago, they got back into medium duty, and did it in such a way that they didn't have a huge investment. They literally bought off the shelf for things like a Cummins engine, an Allison transmission, Meritor axles, things like that, and assemble it. And I still laugh about this, in a former comic book publishing plant in Roanoke, Virginia. So it was really interesting. I've asked questions over time about, well, how's it doing, things like that. And you don't get a lot of good answers. But yesterday, the Dale Weatherall, who is the head of medium duty for Mack, gave out some pretty interesting figures. In their first year in the market, they picked up about 3.7 points of market share, which is, from 0 to 3.7 is significant. I mean, it isn't a market leading position, but it says something that, there was a space for another medium duty. This is a market that historically is about 100,000 vehicles a year. More recently, it's been more like 130,000 with the increase in, pickup and delivery and last mile and things like that. So, Mack got in at a pretty good time, it looks like. They announced one major change yesterday. They're going to offer a heavier duty transmission from Allison because they want to get more into vocational. Now, the first year of sales was about a little more than 70% was in dry van and reefer and stake trucks, kind of traditional uses for medium duty. But now they really do want to address more of that vocational market. So a heavier transmission will help them do that.
Alan, I'm interested in kind of the vibe around electrification right now in the space where we're talking about these incredible fuel prices, and it's the geopolitical climate is kind of influencing now this necessary transition where we see that, electric might be the way to go, but then you still have to think about, okay, well, we need to source our electric energy from somewhere. That's beside the point. Has there been kind of can you tell us a little bit about that vibe, if like there's any conversations going on around, this is a good use case for why we should be going electric?
Right. I just saw something this morning. It's actually a few days old from the Department of Energy, Kaylee, that I thought was interesting, and it sort of adds a little bit of momentum or credence, whatever you like, to the idea that electric probably is going to, from a total cost of ownership perspective, be a good value after you get past the upfront cost of the electric vehicle, and they're saying that by 2030, about half of the medium and heavy duty trucks really would be pencil out better on electric than they would on diesel, which is pretty interesting, because you do hear those questions about, well, what if I can't charge? What if I can't get electric? That chicken and egg thing. Although I loved it the other day, I never heard this, but Leanne Randolph referred to it as peanut butter and jelly, meaning that you have to have both to make a sandwich. And it's true. She described, and I'll get to your question here in just a minute, but she described the role of CARB really as sort of, encouraging the vehicles and then getting, both sales quotas for the vehicles as well as quotas on the fleets to buy those vehicles. And she said, really, the California Electric Commission is the one that's kind of, fronting the work on charging and on getting enough charging to keep these vehicles going. So nobody really knows whether we're talking about just having to build more power lines or what we're going to need to do. We also have this issue of whether it's a clean grid, that is, whether it's, the grid is fired by coal, which isn't very clean, or whether it's, fired by renewable fuels, which is. And so, you've got a lot of issues around the grid that are going to have to get worked out. But I think that this momentum probably isn't going to stop when it comes to the electric vehicals themselves.
A lot of it, when you start talking about it, Alan, it almost feels to me like kicking the can down the road. I mean, California and their electrification board, et cetera, whatever, they have rolling brownouts during heat waves, et cetera, and now they're going to have all electric vehicles. Good luck with that. But who's leading the charge as far as alternative fuels for these things, right? We talk about electrification of vehicles or EVs all the time, but what about the other alternative fuels, right? I mean, we have some people that are, will just tell you electric vehicles aren't going to happen. John Kingston will tell you that type of stuff. But what is the view there? Is it all on electric vehicles, or is it towards LNG or what?
Well, I think, the question really becomes, are you talking about California? Because you're talking about California, they're not interested, honestly, in much of anything except electricity. I think that there is a move towards renewable natural gas. I mean, there's certainly, and that is a non-oil-based or non-petroleum product, right? It comes from, farm waste and things like that. So it's something that does have a good sort of carbon footprint. You do have, Cummins and a few other companies that are really looking. I mean, Cummins said the other week they're going to sort of harden their engines so they can run on a variety of different fuels in addition to diesel, natural gas being one, renewable natural gas, and interestingly enough, hydrogen. And now I'm not talking about a fuel cell vehicle here. We're talking about actually putting hydrogen into an internal combustion engine as the fuel. So that's something that, sort of caught Leanne Randolph off guard. She was asked about that, about the idea of fueling an internal combustion engine with hydrogen, and she was like, I don't know if that's going to work. And so she really didn't know the answer because she wasn't familiar with the topic. But I think this idea that everything has to be a plug-in, it's clearly going to moderate, Michael. And it's funny that you mentioned the thing about the rolling brownouts, because that's one of the issues, is that if you can't run your air conditioner, how are you going to charge your vehicle, right? I mean, during a brownout. So I think there's issues that have to get worked through, and yet California has made it so much of a requirement that everybody is being, kind of influenced by that. It was interesting because, the obvious question to ask about a Mack medium-duty truck, going back to that subject, is, well, will you do an electric version? I mean, Navistar International will is and will build its medium-duty electric in San Antonio with the plant they'll open later this month. They're building that truck in Mexico now. But they will do a medium-duty electric, and that's their first electric vehicle. They'll probably eventually do a Class 8, LT with electricity. But for right now, medium duty is the place where the payback is quickest, the charging time is shorter, and it takes less electricity to, bring a medium duty out. So that question you asked, Kaylee, about use case, I think is spot on for medium duty. And so I think you will see much more of that. It was interesting that the response, there was not actually an announcement at MAC yesterday, but I think the comment went something like this: well, it's not on the cutting room floor and it's being studied on somebody's desk, which means look out a couple of years, you will see an electric version of the Mack medium duty. Right now, Mack only does a garbage truck, Class 8 LR electric refuse hauler that it's building in Pennsylvania. And that's it for them right now on electrification. But it'll get down there to medium duty for them for sure.
Interesting to watch, Alan. And before we let you go today, we would be remiss if we didn't wish you a happy birthday.
Oh, thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Very nice. Thank you.
Happy
It is
birthday.
my birthday. Yeah.
Now,
Thank
don't
you
go
so
out
much.
and get crazy. Act like you've been there before, my friend.
No, that was, no, not me, Michael. Not me.
You're not a rookie. You're not a rookie at this anymore.
Not a rookie anymore.
All right, Alan, thank you. Have a good birthday. Enjoy the rest of your time in Indianapolis. Right now, we're going to toss it over to meteorologist Nick Austin. He's talking about our next big snowstorm shaping up for this middle March. Nick, what you got?